All right, I think we are recording. So thank you all for joining today. I'm excited to introduce Monica. Not is blank, Monica.
Yeah, that's how they know me.
We are back a couple of weeks later for part 2 of a guide to refactoring automations into flows. Had some really great best practices last time, and you can find those recordings in the Trailblazer community. There's a link to it in the insurance community portion of things. I'm happy to link this out as well as I send information. And this time I think she's going to be giving a little bit more of a hands-on demo-y type vibe along with it. So I'm super excited to have her here today. And I'm going to turn it on over to them.
Do we have a bad connection or just me? Connection is bad, so just hang tight in case you lose me. Okay, I think it's better now.
Okay. Did you guys hear me okay, hopefully?
Yes.
Okay.
We did hear you well. Yeah.
Good. All right. Over to you, Monica.
Okay, here we go. I am going to just move something. Slideshow. Not beginning. Oh, I did that too soon. Hold on. Before I get back to that, I need to share before I do that. Okay, everyone can see my slideshow. Okay, so today we are talking about refactoring automation to flow. This is part 2. Part 1 was
Monica, actually, if you want to, you're showing the next slide, like the presenter portion.
Oh, yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All good.
It's not. Let me try this again.
There we go. That's perfect.
There we go. You don't want to see my notes. Trust me, I don't have many notes on here anyway. And you don't want to see them. Okay, let me make it so I can see. All right, we're good now. All right, so we are talking about Guide to Refactoring Automation to Flow Part 2. We could do Part 3. As I was building the demo for today, I was like, there could be 3, 4, 5. I don't even know how many. So I'm going to be talking fast. I'm going to go through some demos. And you're still gonna probably want more, possibly. It's to try and get you to think and have some ideas of what's ahead with refactoring flow, and there's a lot. And so last week we talked about the strategy and logistics and doing proper business analysis. That I can't say that. I could say it 100 times. It's not enough times. And in this session, I'm going to show you more of the technical side, but we are still, I hate to break it to you, we're still going to get into some analysis, because when you see your workflows, when you're really examining what you have in your process builders, if you don't do a full analysis and you aren't aware of everything, you're not doing yourself a service. If you're just using the Salesforce, and I'm going to show you how it works, and it's really cool, the tool that they have that you can transform processes and workflows to flow. Very, very cool. But if you just do that and activate it, you really are missing out on the added. It's an upgrade to flow. And so you're going to really miss out on a lot of things, in addition to the fact that you're probably not solving your problems as well as you can. And you may be solving, as Stuart pointed out last week, you could be solving a problem that's not even a problem anymore. So we don't want to just turn it on and forget it. So let's get into it a little bit here. And let's see what we have. And I built this in a developer org, and this is the best way to learn. And I always tell you, I don't have all the answers. I have lots and lots of questions, and this is how I learn. I built this in a developer org, and this is kind of a use case, and I made it imperfect for a reason, because when you're dealing with refactoring, chances are you're dealing with imperfect. And so we're going to have some few challenges with this, but basically I'm showing you a real universal use case. Is we don't like our users. We're talking about billing contacts on account. So I want to know for Acomo My, who do I send the invoice to? And this is a common thing. And I don't want my users to copy and paste and to go and old school it. That's what automation is for. And so many times we may have been building workflow rules, and I have some workflow rules that are doing some cool stuff here, that if you choose an accounting firm, an external accounting firm that's going to pay the invoices for Ekomomai, then I want to know, who do I have to call and what's their email, and do they have like a third-party invoice email, which is very common. And when I click save on choosing my lookup accounting firm, yes, everything is populated for me, and this is done through workflow rules. This could be Process Builder, and we're going to look at these workflow rules and see how we can transform them. So we have our accounting firm, which was the lookup, and we have a billing email and invoice email. And I want to show you how imperfect it is. And we've already made a sacrifice here. And this is common. If you have workflow rules from years ago, workflow rules can't do what flows can today. And so you may have some hard coding somewhere. You may have extra fields. You may have extra objects. You may have all kinds of workarounds that you didn't realize. You just got used to them that are actually workarounds. And so that billing email is really a workaround, because Mavia is my contact and there's her email, and my user's forced to copy and paste it into there so that my workflow rule can then pull it into my client account. Because workflow rules can't do get records and go through all my contacts and find my primary AP contact. And so you probably, this is one of the things I'd like you to look for when you're looking at your workflow rules, is to really look at your fields and say, is that field there? Is there still some manual, or maybe there's just still a manual process and you have some automation and some manual. The point of automation is so that your users, you get better data quality, and you get better data quality by not trusting your users to make every single change. So we also have workflow rules here, and this is cool. This is what you want to do. The accounting firms no longer, we fired Acme. They weren't very good accounting firm. And so when I fired them, when Ekomomai fired them, then we can't send the emails anymore to Acme. So we want to clear it. And so I'm showing you some of the workflow rules that I created for this scenario. And I didn't create all of them that you would have, but I'm sure if we were really building this out old school, you would have workflow rules everywhere, you know, for the contact, for the other object. And we'd be trying to grab those email addresses. And so here I'm showing you, well, what if it's an internal? What if Einstein is actually paying the bills? We don't have an external accounting firm. So then we would have to have workflow rules for that. And that's going to be hard coded, because we can't go and look necessarily to find the right contact here. And there's a lot of things that you may not have been able to do with workflow rules in the same way we can do with Flow. And I just want you to be aware of that as we make this transition, is when you get to the tool that you're upgrading to Flow, you're going to get so much more. And when even from Process Builder, there's a lot of things that Process Builder can't do that Flow can do. So let's see, what would you do? So first, we're going to start with our imperfect, and we're going to take these workflow rules as we have them. And I just want to show you how it works. How am I going to upgrade these workflow rules? What does Salesforce, how do they help us? And they have this thing called Migrate to Flow. And if you're new to Flow, now I myself don't use it because I like to just start from scratch when I'm refactoring. But it's really, really helpful, and I'm going to show you how and why here in just a moment. But first, we're back to business analysis. So I showed you a few of the things we need to look at. We have a lot of workflow rules, and I know it's overwhelming. What I said last week was, oh, you need to go through and see all of your objects and see everything that's happening. And then the people part of it, and what does your business actually need, and how are the people actually interacting with Salesforce, and what are they actually doing? And then how your automation and how everything fits together, and what problem are you solving, and what is your solution? Does your solution still work? And I just want to bring this back in just to remind you that these are the things we do want to think about. And the one thing when we are converting any of our old automation is there a better way? Do we need it? Do we not need it? And how can we do this best? But we want to use the tools that we have at hand. And I'm going to show you in a minute. I stopped again for one more thing. The documenting the existing automation, really, really important. And one of the things is that you may want to break it down by object and then even further by process. So if you have, I would call that our billing process. And so what we're talking about, those emails there, is part of our billing process. And I use Conga, and there's so many other things as part of it. But that part of those workflow rules is part of our billing process. Our overall, how do we bill our clients? We need to know where to send those invoices and what are we going to do with them, etc. So I want you, maybe you break it down, whatever's easier, but it's overwhelming to say, oh, okay, I'm going to do everything on account. Well, maybe you just want to do one process and kind of put it into one thought and work on that as its own thing first and separate that out process by process. And I do think that that's one of the best ways to build flows. So I wanted to show you the ugly here, and I did this on purpose. I actually had workflow rules like this when I look at my workflow rules, where I had an external invoice, a company that was handling the invoices. And we had, it started out as just one workflow rule. Somebody said to me, oh, well, when it's this particular company, they want you to do this, that they're using this invoice email and this billing email. And then sometimes it's this and sometimes that criteria. It started out as one. Next thing I knew, another company had some weirdo thing that they needed, and another company. And I had all these hard-coded, not good. I'm not saying. And that's the other thing. None of us know everything. What, you know, you're dealing with the tools you have, you're dealing with the knowledge you have. You look back at something you did 5 years ago, you're going to cringe a little bit, but we all do that. It's all good. There's nothing wrong with that. It's all learning. And so I had stuff like this kind of hard-coded, one company at a time rules. If it's this company, do this. If it's this company, do that. And that's the thing you don't need anymore with Flow. I just want to point that out, that this can go away because there's so much more we can do with Flow. Okay. So now I'm showing you one of the other. This is the first one we're going to start with. This workflow rule is going to be the first one we convert to a flow. And we're using a created, edited, and it's on account object. And we have a formula as our entry criteria. And this is real common with workflow rules. So let's get to it. I know you're super excited to do this. And this is what you've been waiting for. So I just built a few sample rules in my developer work. And we can see we have some that are like hard-coded with Mark Benioff. And you might have some of those. And those are the things to look at and say, is there a better way? Is there something else I can solve? Is there a different way to solve for that? And you just don't want to convert things like that straight away right into a flow. I don't want a separate flow for Benioff accounting. It really won't serve you very well. And so here we're going to start the migration. And we're going to start with that billing emails copy. And so the way you get to it is you put in the word flow and you see migrate to flow. And we're going to start with that one workflow rule. This will have your workflow rules and your process builders on this migrate to flow wizard or object, whatever you want, app that Salesforce has provided for us. And super simple, you choose one and then you click migrate to flow and the flow is done. already done. It's amazing. It's that fast. So this is really fantastic. If you have an extra sandbox or something, this would be great as a learning thing to convert a lot of your workflows to see, and your processes, and see what they look like in Flow. A different thing with Process Builder, though, that we'll have to, if you want another session, I'd have to get into it, in that it doesn't make really pretty flows. So we have now, our flow is going to do exactly the same thing. This is not the flow running. I'm just showing you again what our workflow rule was doing, that it was finding our contacts and our AP contact from Acme and bringing it in to Ecomo. And this is what that flow looks like. That was a workflow with field updates, and now we have a single flow, and that looks super easy, doesn't it? So let's go through, and I want to show you the translation. I want to show you. So we're on account object. That's how Salesforce built that flow. And they're referring to the account object like this one. Ecomo is my account object. And if I'm going to save this object or create this object, this flow will run, create or updated. And let's check our workflow rule and see how that looks. Our workflow rule says object account. See, it's almost the same. The name from our workflow rule is what Salesforce used to name the flow. Now, those might not be ideal, because back when I was doing workflow rules, I was naming them really not great names. I came up with a naming convention later. So also here, entry conditions. We had a formula in our workflow rule. Salesforce already created the formula for us in our flow. That's great. So now we can see what it looks like. The same formula looks like in Flow. So this is great for learning. If you're new to Flow, I recommend just doing as many of these as you can. If you haven't, like I said, an extra sandbox, so you're not going to have a problem. It's not going to cause issues. This is great. So we had billing override as one of our criteria. So billing override equals false. That's how it looks in our workflow rule, right? Pretty straightforward. Let's see what it looks like in the flow. The flow, billing override equals false. But here's one little difference. Salesforce adds an exclamation $ record, and that is referred to as a variable. And that variable is holding the account information. So account, Ecomo. So if we were on this account and we clicked edit or save on this account, it's like a little placeholder. That record variable is holding Ecomo's information. And the way you would create your own formula here is you type in rec to get to record, and it's already there for you. Salesforce has created this for you. You don't have to do anything. And all the fields are there. So just like you can get to all the fields in a formula, you can get to all the fields right here. Super easy. And we have every time the record is updated and created, and every time it is updated to meet conditions, and that matches up to our workflow rule. Now, fast field update. Salesforce has made a decision and chosen that as the type of flow, and that means we're on an account object and we're making an update to account object fields. It's 10 times faster to use before save. So whenever you can, Salesforce did it because it's the best way to go. We have the billing email and the invoice email, and they set it as record accounting firm billing email. So where's that coming from? Here's Acme Accounting, and there's our billing email. So it's taking that email field and putting it in as our fields, and the same for invoice. It's going and finding the accounting firm from the lookup and grabbing the email. And so we were doing that exact same thing in our workflow rule. So here's how you would do it. If you were trying to set the value, you'd go record, accounting firm, and then invoice email. It's a lot like, so you already know how to do this. This is a lot like doing a formula field and very much like what you would see in Process Builder. So we have our workflow rules, and the thing about workflows is now we have separate field updates for each one. And we have to have 11111, and there it is, accounting firm, invoice email. So it's almost the same. So when you think you don't know Flow, you know it more than you think you do. And it's really not that difficult. But this is really pretty because I can see it all on one update, one place, instead of having to open up each field update like I had to in workflow. So we're already upgraded. See how easy that flow looks and how easy that was for Salesforce to create it. I think it took about 30 seconds, if even 30 seconds. So that's a great starting point. And looking at these, this is what I suggest if you're new to this, is to use this way that they have to transition your workflows to Flow. But we're not done yet, because I really feel that we can improve upon that. And one of the reasons I don't like it of going 1111, I just want to see where I am with the recording. Just check. Yes. Okay. So is because of this multiple entry points. Salesforce allows you to create, I don't know, per object, it's like 2,000 flows. And as you're refactoring, you're going to find yourself with a lot of workflows and process builders. And you're going to see how it's not so fun, because you're going to have a lot of them and keeping track of them. And that's the same issue I have with Flow, is that my philosophy, and you're going to hear everyone has different philosophy, not completely different, but there are different thought processes for how many flows you should have. And mine is as few as possible. I try to combine flows wherever I can, because I don't want to, first of all, I want to see my process. We were talking about billing. I want to understand what's really happening in billing all in one place. I don't want to look in 10 different places and try and figure out where my automation is connecting to my people and to my Salesforce records. I want to be able to see that in as few places as possible. So for this reason, and the fact that we talked about last week, where you can have errors due to multiple entry points going into the same object doing the same thing, and you can possibly get into loops, and you can have your data overwritten by another flow. As few as possible is what I think is a good philosophy. It doesn't mean 2, it doesn't mean 1, it just means let's not take everything we have here and do 11111 and replicate what we had before. Because what I realized with my org, and my org's 10 years old, so I was all in on workflow because it was amazing. It was before Flow. So I want to show you now, we're going to take another one. We're going to take the one that cleared the billing fields. We're going to take that one, and we also ran through the exact same wizard as we did before, and it gives us our formula as it did before. It pulled it straight from our workflow. And the reason I'm doing this is I want to show you, and let's just recap what our workflow is going to do here, is we're going to fire Acme. And what do we want to happen? If Acme is no longer my accounting firm, I don't want those fields to still have Acme. I don't want to send the invoice to Acme anymore. So we have not is blank, you wonder why I chose that as my formula. Not is blank is my favorite formula. And that's why it's what I go by, not is blank. Okay, so we're going to see that's still our workflows going, but now we're going to do this as a flow. And what I want to show you is what I'd like you to think about is taking this flow that Salesforce just created and the flow we just did a moment ago and think, wouldn't it be better if they were both together? Just think about that for a minute. But first, I want to show you how easy that update. Again, we can see all 3 fields updated, and we're leaving the value as null. Blank and null. It's is blank in a formula field is similar to the way in Flow they're going to use is null. So is null true? Is blank. So we have 2 new flows in this org, and those were both created using the conversion from workflow to flow. And this is what I was talking about. We could have 2,000 of this. Salesforce is okay with that. But try keeping track of 2,000 of them and try figuring out which one is running when. You see, my naming convention here, and those of you that know me, this is not how I name things. But I wanted to make this really realistic of the way most people do things. But my workflow rules were named like this, and that's what Salesforce used. But in Flow, I have a completely different naming convention. Okay. So when does it run? So right now, each one has entry conditions that are saying run when these things are true. Now, the good thing about entry conditions is it is the fastest way your flows do run faster. It's very small amount to me, the speed, but it is faster. So Salesforce will say, yes, use entry conditions. But if you have narrow entry conditions like this, we're going to end up with a lot of flows. And trying to figure out which one is it running on create? Is it running on update? What is my criteria? And if I go there, I can kind of see a little bit from that description of my flow, but I really can't tell what that is. So I wouldn't be able to know when is copy running, when is clear running. And that to me is one of the reasons why, if you can, it's better to combine flows of similar purpose. So we have this one for copy, and we have our entry criteria. Oh, did somebody say something? Are we okay? All right. We have our entry criteria. So what I'd like to do is show you how to combine these 2 flows into one flow and how different that's going to look. And so we can see that both of them are running under created and updated. And if you were to just combine all of your workflows, like I said, you would just have a long list here. And we don't want to put those in production. So you may want to do that in your sandbox just to play around and see everything. But that's not what I suggest going into production. What I do suggest is you think about things, especially like this, where it's a process, billing. So what I want to do here is show you how we're going to take that entry condition, and we're actually going to use, instead of entry conditions, we're going to just, and this is what I do sometimes, I do screenshots so that I know what my criteria was. Now, the other thing I want to mention is you need to check your criteria. So you wrote your workflow rule or your process builder 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I have some that are 10 years old. Is the criteria still valid? Right? So we want to make sure of that. But here we have the copy one. And what I want to do is combine the functionality of my copy and my clear flows together. So for right here, I would normally go to new flow and rename it and start fresh. Right now, we're just going to get this done quickly and easily. I'm just going to change my flow label. And the problem is you can't change the API name. Once you have an API name, you cannot change it. So a lot of times I do end up going to save as a new flow when I'm going to do something like this. But here we have, we're going to try and do both things. And I want to show you what that's going to look like. 2 flows into one. And this is ideally most of this entire thing, if we really were going to build this out in the real world, this scenario of billing, we could do almost everything in one flow. Okay, so we're going to change the condition to none just for here, but I would change that to client, account type client, because you don't need it to run if it's not a client, but I didn't do that here when I built this. So we are now going to do a decision element. So the decision element is very similar to what you're going to see in Process Builder. We're going to do a decision element. And that way we can have paths for clearing and for copying, 2 different paths. And again, it's something that naming convention does matter, but I was really just trying to get this done. So I'm going to be honest with you. This is not ideal naming convention, but we're going to get it done. And we're not going to go through every single criteria, but I want you to get the idea of what this is going to look like. So how would we build this instead of a formula? We are going to use that record. So start typing REC, and then all the fields are available to you, just like in a formula, just like you're doing any other formula in Salesforce. And we're going to say billing override equals false. So if my user is doing a billing override, they know better than I do, and they don't want me to run automation. So now we're going to go to our record and look for accounting firm and say, do we have an accounting firm? And this is where I talked about Flow uses is null. So is null false means we have an accounting firm. Is null true means there's not. And that's a little confusing at first, but think about it. Is null, just think, is it blank? Yes or no? False or true? Is null false? So I do have an accounting firm. And I have to have that because otherwise I have nothing to copy. So that's why that's our criteria. And I'm just going to show you here that we can say our billing email on Ekomomai, does it equal record accounting firm? The billing email, that's the one we copied from the accounting firms, you see, does not equal. So if they're not the same, we don't want to run this all the time. So I would actually have more criteria there, but that was just to give you an idea of how you build this criteria. And we're going to do the same thing now for our other flow. So copy fields was going to take us a path to kind of run everything we did in the first flow. And our second flow, to clear all the fields when we take it off, we're going to record and you see how you have record prior. I wanted you to see that record or record prior. That's something you can't do everywhere else in Salesforce. And we can actually get back to what was the value before my user changed that accounting firm? Did I have something there before? Was there an accounting firm before they cleared it? If it's been null all along, I don't want to run this automation because there's no reason to. So I want to know, was there something there? And is there not something there now? And now I'm saying, is null true? So I'm saying, there was an accounting firm, there's not anymore. I just wanted to show you how that works. And again, we would have more criteria than this. And you do have a choice of if the record similar to you do in Process Builder and in workflows, if the conditions are met, or only if it's changed to meet the conditions. And I'm not going to worry about that right now. We're just trying to get these paths built so you can see what this is going to look like. And so we're going to say, is the billing email equal to what it was before? And then, or I could say is billing email null. There's a lot of ways to do it. I'm just trying to show you every kind of way of getting to those record variables. Okay, so this is our existing flow. And what I need to do, and we have two paths. Now, default is something sometimes I don't, sometimes I use and sometimes I don't. If it's a yes or no situation, I'll use default as no. But a lot of times if I have criteria like this, I don't like to use default as a path that I'm going to do anything with, because it's hard to debug and it's not clear what do they mean by default. There might be something you missed with a criteria and then everything goes to default and then you can't figure out why your automation's not running. So we have our update that we had from our initial flow and we just moved it over to the copy path. That's all we did. And now we need to update on the clear path. So we're just going to recreate the field updates that we had when we're going to clear. So we have already established what criteria is going to take to run. And we're just going to recreate what we saw in the other flow, which is just our fields left with value of blank, value of null. And there we are. So we have two paths. We now, if you look at this flow, we can see it so much better than in our workflow where we had to go through each field update and separate workflows. And I wanted to show you that the field update says blank value null. So they made it very clear in workflow, and that's why it's null in flow. And I'm showing you again the clear. That's basically the equivalent to what we just saw with the workflow rule. That's the equivalent of just leaving it blank. Now, global constant is different than blank. That's for another story. But as long as you leave it blank, it's equivalent to null. So we didn't have a criteria to start, but like I said, what would be a good criteria just to narrow it down so this thing doesn't run every single time there's an account is to narrow it down to some degree, and I would narrow it down to customer type as my type of account. And they named it main update because Salesforce didn't know what to name the update records. But now, if we look at this, it's really quite obvious what's happening. We can look at the flow and know what our process is. Have a much better idea here with our paths of copy, our path of clear, and there's our updates. And it's something I want you to think about when you're refactoring is, can you do something like this? Can you combine some of your workflows into something logical? Don't just, I just want this one with that one for no reason. If it's logical like this, it makes sense. So we have so much more functionality with flow, and that's the good news. And then there's that decision, do we do it? When do we do it? And this is a decision you'll have to make of when the right time is to upgrade certain flows, certain workflows, certain process builders, or do you want to do them all? That's all a decision we need to make. But we also have some issues here that we were hard coding Einstein, and we were hard coding the Akomomai, and we had like workflows that were set. If it's Akomomai, then it's Einstein, which makes no sense at all. So Flow can handle this quite easily. That is very simple because it can just look right up, and we're going to do it now. I'm going to show you how we can add that functionality right in. We just add another path, and the other path is in-house. Now, in a few moments, I'm going to show you if I were doing this. I just was trying to make this as clear as possible. I would do it slightly differently. So there's a lot of ways to skin a cat, right? But this is completely valid to do it this way. And we're going to say in-house, and we want to know, is there an accounting firm? If there's no accounting firm, we have to assume it's in-house. And we don't need our user to have to put Einstein's name or Einstein's email every time. So we are going to automate that for them. So I'm just going to give you some criteria here. Let's see what we're going to do. Let's look and see if our record has a billing contact name. So is Einstein's name there? Is null true, which means no, we don't. So is null true means kind of no, it is blank, is blank. That's equal to is blank, is null true. And do we have a billing email? And we would say both of those. We could change our criteria. We could do filtering, but right now I just want to get this done so that we could see the path. There's another path. And basically what we want to do now is look for our contacts and see which one is set as the billing email. So what we need to do is do what they call a get records. And this is something in Flow that is so powerful. And some people really don't realize, even in these before save flows, that doing lookups in before save flows is really powerful. And I'm just putting this so it's real clear for us right now, but I would name that with something with the word contact in it. And so I have contact is my object. And which contact am I going to get? I'm going to get all the contacts that the account ID equals the record account ID. So that means account ID is equal to, we're on a ComoMy record. That's where we clicked edit. And so it's going to find all of my contacts for ComoMy. That's what that means. So we need that. And now we want to know which one is the billing contact. And we want it to be true. Now, this is something that you normally, we're only going to get the first record today. But normally I would get all of the records in case my users made a mistake and marked 3 different people as the billing contact. And then we would have to have some way either to do an error message or send an error message or do an exception, trigger an exception report or something to figure out which contact. But for right now, for simplicity's sake, we're just going to get one and assume that our users did this correctly and only have one of all the contacts marked as the billing. And so after you do a get records, it's really important and good to always check if the record actually exists. Is there? Did we find anything? And you want to do this because if we didn't find anything and we're expecting an outcome, this is really important. Also for debugging, we can see real quickly if a user says, oh, I didn't find, it didn't set a billing, we're going to know, well, that's because there isn't one. So we say if it's found, yes, and then we're going to update our record. Only if we have a yes, only if we found one. If we didn't find one, we don't want to go through update record. So you want to do as little as possible. And you can see that my naming convention here is not great. So we're just going to get through this right now. And we are going to now set the billing name and we're going to set the billing email. And it's really easy in this case because we only have one record. So all we have to do, we named it contact from in-house contact. Salesforce already made it for us. That's called a variable. And it's only one record. So it's super easy to get to what we want. We're just going to say that one contact that you found, give me the full name. The one contact that you found, so we're going to go whatever we named it, and we're going to click through, just like a formula, we're going to click through to the field we want. I would say, okay, now get me that email, because I know there's only one. If I had multiples and was checking for errors, then I would have to have more decisions. I don't want to get into that right now. Then I might have to do a loop and find the newest one or something, whatever criteria. We don't want to go there right now. But the point of this is that we can see that if there's no clerk found, we're done. Nothing is going to get updated. Nothing is going to get updated. And now we have a better sense. We could keep building this out with every scenario, everything that would have to do with billing for our client accounts. We could have it all in one place and be able to really easily understand and see what's happening. And we have no hard coding. We didn't have the name of, if it's this account, then use this person. And if it's that account, use that person. We didn't have to do that. And that's what's so amazing with Flow. We didn't have to do that. And so we probably need on the accounting side, this is again, a hard-coded billing email coming from a contact. We should really have another flow fixing this. We shouldn't have to, because she could change her email. She could maybe not work for the company anymore. We might need a different person. So we probably need another flow for that. But the idea here is to get in as much as you can kind of functionality into one place. Rather than, you can see we had a lot of workflow rules, and then I didn't even open up all the field updates. So if you count how many things you can fit into one thing, much, much better to go with Flow and to think about all of these things. Now, we have this accounting email, and the solve for this, because of these lookups, like I said, we had done this billing email, this hard coding, and that's not ideal. So this is the type of thing that if I were actually building those flows, and I was just trying to show you how to go from workflow, is I would build my flow a different way. I'm just trying to give you an idea. It would build it something like this, where I'm starting out with only customer records, and the customer records are the only ones that would even get to the decision. And then I would want to know, am I in-house or external with my billing? Do I have an external firm or an in-house? And then the in-house would be checking for the contact records, finding the right one, and then going to my billing. And then the external is what we saw before. And by doing it this way, it is similar to what we had before, but instead of having that hard coded, I'm going and doing a get record of my account, of my contacts for my external firm, just like I did with my internal. So there's so many ways to do this. I just want to kind of open your eyes to all the possibilities and to really thinking it through, that there might be a better way to do something. So, all right, if I didn't totally lose you, do we have any questions? Is anybody still here?
Everyone's still here, I think, and we've had some additional people join in.
All right.
I'm going back through to see, yep, Jennifer says we're still here. So a question a little bit ago, can I combine 2 to 3 workflows in one flow? I think we talked through that and we have that information. Looking to see, did we miss anyone? I know Stuart had his hand up at one point. Stuart, do you still have a question?
Yeah,
Oh,
no.
Stuart is good. All right.
Yeah, I appreciate the fact that you had walked through. I got a little nervous when you hit that early on. When you hit the, hey, it's as easy as this. You click on the workflow, and then you click the magical, we're going to convert this to a flow button, everybody. Let's do this. And I was like, whoa, no, we're not going to do that, because You are trusting, you're a trusting, very intelligent, wise person. I am an untrusting, critical, cynical person who, by clicking that magical button, I think this is going to fail miserably and everyone is going to hate me. But you walked us through and said, after you do this, check everything to make sure that it actually got the right naming convention, that actually picked up the right objects. So I appreciate that. Once you have done this, so you worked in a sandbox. Good for you. You did this in a sandbox. Once you've done all this work, now what? Are you going to reproduce this in production, or what? What happens with this stuff?
You're only going to have one final flow like that last one I was showing, which is totally imperfect, but you would solve for that issue, whatever it is, and you would refine it down to one flow, and the one flow would get moved to production, and then you would deactivate your workflow rules and activate your flow. It's, I think, expecting people to build from scratch like I would. I've been using Flow since the day Flow came out, and I was pretty early with record trigger flows. Oh, I will say I was experimenting with record trigger flows. I did not have them in production until 2 years ago, until I thought they were getting ready for prime time. I was very cautious about that, but I was playing around with them. So what I would say is that I think for people starting out and understanding the differences and really seeing what their workflow was doing, because ordinarily you would have to go to look at all your field updates and you would have to look at all these different things. If you use the conversion tool, you can see them all in one spot. So you've got a starting point for your flow. You've got a starting point as an example, but that's why I said, if you have an extra sandbox, especially, I happen to have, we have an org where we have one full partial and we have a ton of pro. I could easily just go into one of those and knock these things out and have every single one of them converted, so I could see the formulas and see the criteria and see what it is. And that helps you get you started, especially if you haven't been building flows for years and it's not so easy for you to figure out the connections and is that null, is that not null, what is this, what is that. I do think that there's a place for it, but I don't think that by clicking through and just activating them all as is, that's at all way to go. I hope that was clear.
And I know that you said it during the call here, but and I'm gonna have to step out in a second, but I just want to remind people that, especially when you're combining things and things might have some slightly different entry criteria, always assume and remind yourself that while you're in the sandbox, you don't have all the data. Assume
100%.
Assume that while you believe that this this flow is only going to work for 200 records,
that's great advice.
You still have 10 million records in your database.
Yes.
And this flow is going to run on 10 million
That
records.
Is fantastic advice.
So just remember
that
no matter what your entry criteria are, your flow may run on 10 million records.
Right. Especially if you do that is updated or created and somebody does some kind of update and then you didn't anticipate that all your records changed their values. 10 million records because your entry criteria was too loose. Yes.
Yeah. So good luck.
That's awesome.
Thank you, Monica. This was an excellent presentation.
Thank you so much. See you soon. Bye. Anything else? Don't be shy.
I had a question. Oh, excuse me. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was wondering, so the next session, did we say we are going to go over process builder?
I am willing to, if it's something that you guys are into and want to see. I'd have to build out another demo. It takes me a little bit of time, so we'll probably be looking at August, but yeah, I could definitely do that.
I think that would be useful because I do have clients where they're in the process of updating their org, and this is why I went to this series is because I'm gonna have to be doing this soon. So yeah, I would love to see that.
And that is a question of, do you do it? How much do you do it? Do you only
Right.
do the critical? Do you start with the easy? Do you start with the difficult? You know, is the automation already doing what you want it to do? Because Salesforce is not going to turn everything off. You're not going to
Right.
lose Process Builder. You're not going to lose workflows. However, I'm showing you the upgrade, right? That you could do so much more. You could see it better. You can have a better handle on it. But it's
Mhm.
not without risks, just like what Stuart just mentioned, that, you know, you have to really, really be aware of what's going to happen.
Yeah,
So
I liked what you said too. You said look for process, like in looking for through your workflow rules, look for processes that are still manual that you can automate as well. Yeah,
right, it's
I
the
never even
whole
thought of
thing.
that. Yeah, I had not even considered that.
Yeah, I think that's overlooked. A lot of times we just say, well, we already have automation, let's just transfer it. And we forget. I mean, I think I'm a good person in the sense where I have stuff that's 10 years old. So I've been down this road and I
Mhm.
know I have manual stuff because
Yeah,
there were workarounds, extra fields, extra objects that were workarounds for at the time I needed to solve, and I only had workflow.
yeah,
So, and that's a question of, do you undo all of that? And how easy is it to undo that stuff?
yeah, for sure.
So I would love the opportunity for you to come back and do Process Builder. I wonder if in the interim, I know that we've talked about, you know, having some business analysis type sessions that would maybe walk through some of these processes and how you would kind of combine a bunch of this into one, and a better way to document some of those things before you kind of refactor all of that. Maybe that's something that we could call on some additional MVPs out there to come
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
present
I think
on
that'd be wonderful.
in the interim, as you know, as we're kind of working through this series overall and how to get everybody up to date. Another thing that I thought was very interesting, and I feel like I've heard multiple times, you know, that workflow rules are end of life, or, you know, Process Builder is going to be end of life. And you had mentioned, well, you're not losing any of those things. So is there, I wonder if there's some good announcements or kind of just documentation that we could share with the group to make sure that they understand what they can and can't do and what will and won't be lost.
The only thing that's happened is you cannot create new rules.
Create new ones.
You can update rules. You can inactivate, activate rules. And if you have a whole bunch of workflow rules that, I mean, to be honest, I played around with it. I think you can even change them enough where they end up being kind of new rules because you can update them. So if you have working solutions, I don't see the need to rush and,
Right.
and get something wrong, where to me the risks outweigh the rewards.
Mhm.
But doing it methodically
Right.
and going through, and you know, I haven't finished all of mine, and you know, it's not something that I when I have a need, when there's new functionality, when I'm looking at something and I said, okay, this is really not ideal, let me tackle this. But then I have to get into those things of what's hard coded, what fields do I have that I no longer need, you know, what's the impact going to be. And so it is, that's what I want to say is it, and then the validation rules are an issue for workflows. That you have to know that your validation rules are going to fire that didn't fire before. So that's a whole nother thing just to be aware of. It may not be an issue for you on, you know, you might be working on an object that doesn't have a lot of validation rules. And then there's a lot of ways to work around not having validation rules, to do things with screen flows and do, there's so many other ways to do things now where you don't even need validation rules the way you did at one time. But
Right.
those are things to consider.
Awesome.
All
Anyone
right.
else have any question? Oh, Eugene, it looks like you have, do we have any unit tests finally?
Unit test, you mean for Flow?
Yeah, hello guys.
Hi.
I'm curious about when we make some changes in existing, for example, flow, how can we be sure that everything, that our previous logic is still working? For me, it's a big problem. I prefer to work with Apex only because I can easily check.
It's not gonna have the same, I mean, they're working towards it, but yeah, it's
Not
not,
like
you're not gonna be able to do what you can do
So,
in Apex. So in your situation, you know, since it just depends on how, if your org's always gonna have developer, if the admins need to do some things and you know, some objects that you can flow is sufficient for. Every org is different, every situation is different. But there's 100% still a place for Apex.
I understand, and I like working with Apex because for me it looks like everything is under my control. I can be
Mhm.
sure that everything works perfectly. I can prove in front of the business or in front of the QA team that everything is fine, or I need to make some changes because I have some new bug and it could be discovered very easily, just running some tests. That's it. For example, now I'm on Google Fiber project and we needed to implement some time scheduling like events. So I tried to make it with scheduled paths in flows. Everything was done.
Yep.
But later we realized that it's very difficult to control that everything is okay. We don't have a big QA team. So we decided to switch to the Apex. I created scheduled Apex jobs. I created unit tests, and I'm sure that I can go to vacation and everything is fine. So for now, for me, flows, it's very convenient for people who are not backend developers, I would say. Just for a little
It depends on the
coding.
team, right? So your
Yes, of
strong
course.
developer team, that's a different situation. And some orgs have a strong developer team, but they want certain things, they need to be more flexible. So if they need to be more flexible, things are changing all the time. Laws, like I've had laws changing and things changing. So when I did have some code in my org, it caused problems because we weren't able to change it that easily because we don't have a developer on staff. So there's different, and so I don't think very many people are saying to take your Apex and convert it to Flow, unless of course your Apex is real simple. Like some people just have real simple triggers, which kind of makes no sense not to be Flow, you know.
I
But
understand that.
it doesn't sound like
Sometimes-
that's your case.
Sometimes it's very easy. For example, if I need to send email notifications with email alerts, it's very easy to use
Yes.
ancient or obsolete builder, process builder, or now the flow. But to control the result, it's we cannot, unfortunately. For me, it's like a better version of flows, and I'm happy. I would be happy if they do next steps. And for now, for our current projects, it's not a good approach.
Right.
But I understand that it depends, of course, on the seniority of the developers or system administrators.
Correct.
And of course, the project.
Yep.
Yeah.
Those are all good points. Yep.
Thank you.
So that's wonderful. Well, I hope you got something out of it. Just it wasn't.
Sure, learning all the time.
Absolutely.
It was awesome, Monica. As Stuart said when he joined, you're the smartest person out there.
Not even close. Not even close, but I appreciate it. Well, thank you so much. And Danielle, we'll talk and we'll get something else scheduled.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks all for joining. And I'll make sure that I link back at the end of this video to the first video, just in case people missed it. And then obviously be in touch with, hopefully we can get some business process information put in place from a business analysis perspective before Monica goes into.
And I know who we're gonna go after.
Yeah. We have good,
All right.
maybe a person or two in mind. Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. Well,
All
thank
right.
you so much. I know that this took a lot of time and effort. I really appreciate it. You sharing all of your knowledge with the community. It's what makes you the MVP.
Thank you so much.
All right. You
Well,
all
have a good
great
weekend,
day.
everybody. And you enjoy Greece.
Oh, thank you. Bye.
Super
all.
exciting. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.